Raising the Bets is brought to you by the StarQuest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. You're listening to Raising the Bets, a family podcast of pirates and penguins. We're a Catholic family raising 5 kids outside of Boston, sharing the joys and challenges of marriage, homeschool, healthcare, our adventures near and far, making sense of the world and experiencing the best parts of our culture. I'm Dom Bettinelli.
And I'm Melanie Bettinelli.
And I still haven't fixed the spelling of my last name in the script notes where I do the rundown. It's all automated. You know, it posts the template up every week, and I keep forgetting to fix. It bothers me every time I see it.
How is it misspelled?
1 T. It's misspelled. Your last name has 2 T's.
Well, I just feel like every time I say my name, in fact, I feel like I'm stumbling over it because Melanie Bettinelli is, honestly, it's a mouthful.
It has a rhythm. Like Melanie Scott, it kind of just stops. Well, Melanie Bettinelli, it flows. It's like waves.
You would think that after almost 14 years.
14 years? Oh, has it been that long?
Yeah.
Seems like 25.
2 weeks.
Just kidding. Yeah, in 2 weeks. It's our anniversary. Yay! We're not doing anything.
No.
We can't. But anyway, let's talk about what's been going on. So this past week, as you were saying before we got started, you feel like this has been like nothing has happened this week compared to vacation week.
Well, I figure, I mean, I know myself, I'm a low energy introvert. And so when the week we come back from vacation, I just know is going to be like pretty much a waste week. I'm not going to get anything done. We're not going to go anywhere or do anything. It's just going to be recovery from vacation.
I saw just before we were recording, I was reading on Facebook, one of our Facebook friends, Kate, was talking about the pre-vacation cleaning. How much she hates it, but how much she appreciates it when she gets home.
Oh my goodness, yes. I was so happy when we walked in the door that I had cleaned and cleaned and cleaned before we left. The living room was tidy. Nothing was out of place. The kitchen was tidy. The bathroom was tidy. Even the kids' rooms, well, they weren't tidy, but they were...
They were tidier.
They were less of a disaster than usual. And it was... You know, it had been a very long day. We'd been in the car. The kids were cranky. I was cranky. It was after 8 p.m. And just that little gift to my future self of a tidy house to walk into, it was priceless.
Yeah. One of the things I noticed about that Facebook post and the comments was mostly women all talking about how it's so nice to come back from vacation and get a chance to relax and to sit back and rejuvenate. Vacations are not vacations for moms. They just aren't.
Have you seen the meme? It's like a mother washing dishes, and it says something like vacation where you get to do dishes while looking out the window at the beach.
Yeah, it was in closer proximity to the beach.
Closer, yes. That's kind of vacation, right? You still have the same chores, like the same things. You have to
keep the children alive, feed them,
clothe them, make sure they take their medicine and brush their teeth and get to bed on time. Yeah. Those things don't go away just because you're on vacation.
With the added stresses of, okay, we have to entertain them. We're living out in the wild.
They don't have any of their Legos or their...
We have to entertain. Yes, we have to entertain them. We have to get something to do. We have to endure sleeping in the same small space with them that has literally fabric thin walls between us and everyone else who can hear everything.
Oh my goodness. The one night when Sophie spent the night going, stop kicking me, stop snoring, stop breathing loudly.
Sophie. Oh, yes. Poor Sophie has misophonia, which is the she can't endure noises. Even to the point, we've talked about this before, I think, where she sometimes can't endure her own chewing of food. Like so the poor thing has to endure all the rest of us, because she lives in a family of 7 noisy people. And so, yeah, she's never been a good sleeper. Like, I remember when she was little, she'd wake up in the middle of the night with the screams.
She had night terrors. It was bad.
Oh, yeah. I remember, like, sitting in the office with her in this very room, my back to the door to keep her from getting out. and her screeching at me and punching me. Like, she was like, what, 3 or 4? I mean, she was little, so it didn't hurt or anything. But me just wanting to go to bed, I just want to go back to sleep. But keeping her here so she didn't wake all the other kids up. Yeah, but oh my gosh, those days. I'm so glad. Like, I'll endure the her being a little fussy camping in the tent one night of the week. But yeah, so it's nice. It is nice to come home and to a clean house,
Yes.
mostly clean house. And
Which, of course, then as soon as we walk in the door is no longer clean because it's got everybody's backpacks and duffel bags and sleeping bags.
Okay.
And
If you're a parent, you know what I'm about to say, which is whenever we come home, the door opens and then children begin shedding from the very verge
Yes.
of the door across in our case, our front doors in our living room, across the living room. Like, why are you dropping everything here? Take it with
to
you.
your room.
As I said to Lucy this morning as we came in from Mass, why are you putting your shoes there? Where do they go? Will you be able to find them next Sunday? Because guarantee every Sunday I can't find my shoes, like 3 minutes before we have to leave.
And the sad truth is that the camping stuff is still
some of the camping stuff.
Not all of the camping stuff, mind you, but some of it is still in the living room.
Yeah. So much of the camping stuff was still in the living room until this afternoon, a week later.
You took care of a lot of it.
Yeah, so we emptied most of the van last Sunday. I knew that if I didn't do it right away, it wouldn't get done. So we got in Saturday night. Sunday afternoon, I got most of the stuff into the living room because stuff needed to be cleaned and it needed to be repacked. And because when you pack up, you're just kind of shoving things in at that point.
And it was a heroic effort that you did that on Sunday because we were in the middle of a heat wave and it was the hottest it has been all year.
And I had an issue, which I'll talk about in a second, a painful problem that was hampering me all day and all week. But so we got the stuff in, and I eventually was able to wash things, put things, run things through the dishwasher, like the dishes and the stuff, and repackage some things. This stuff that didn't make it back in. There's things that next time we go camping, I'm going to have to take everything out, make sure we've got everything. I mean, it's a checklist. I was hoping I could do all that at the back end of this trip instead of on the front end of the next trip when we're rushing to get things packed. But life is what it is. We are who we are. That's not going to change. But today I knew I had to get that stuff into the shed. The only thing that's not in there now is the sleeping bags.
Right, which we wanted to wash because
I really feel like those need to be washed after that.
The challenge with the sleeping bags, though.
If anybody has some tips on washing sleeping bags, I'd like to hear them.
The challenge is our dryer has a warped drum.
Yes.
And so there's a gap between the drum and the edge of the dryer, and things inevitably get stuck there.
Get stuck there.
Especially zippers. Yes. But really
and torn off.
In every wash load that I put into the dryer, something gets stuck there.
Yeah.
And so I'm
and I don't want to have to buy a new dryer or get a repairman because just getting a repairman out here is $200.
I mean,
you probably have to buy a new drum to fix it.
But my thought was that I could just wash the sleeping bags and then hang them to dry in the backyard, which would be great if I actually got around to washing.
Yeah, I mean we've got plenty of line that we could hang. I could rig up
project
something
for this week.
Yes, now that it's going to be, let's see, let me look at the forecast on my computer's desktop. 90, 90, 91, 86, 84. Maybe next weekend.
Sounds like 90s would be good for drying sleeping bags quickly.
Yeah, that's true. They would dry quickly. Depending on how humid it is. Thunderstorm, storm.
Seriously?
Night storm on Sunday night. Tonight, actually, this should be a night storm too. I need to put the cover on the grill. That reminds me. Tomorrow night, this is your weekly weather forecast from the Boston area. So in the Monday night, which has already happened by the time you listen to this. Monday night, there's supposed to be a thunderstorm. Nothing on Tuesday. Humid on Wednesday. So, I mean, it'll dry, but it's going to be humid, so who knows how quickly it'll dry. But it's better than that one time when we packed everything up wet, forgot. Because we store the sleeping bags all together in one big contractor trash bag that I tie up. We put it away, and then when we took it out, like the next year, everything was all mildewy and gross. We had to throw one away. Like one was irrecoverable.
Yeah, it was bad.
Ugh.
The problem is we have to put them in a big contractor bag because we have mice sometimes in the shed.
Yeah.
And they like to eat.
They like the filling to make their
Fillings,
nests.
yeah.
Yeah. So, and again, I would love a better method, but I don't have. I mean, a contractor trash bag is just the most efficient use of space. If I got like a bin, it wouldn't be efficient. It's I don't know. Anyway, so we put things away. So I finally got most of the rest of the things put away. The sleeping bags are the last thing. The van needs to be cleaned out. We were going to do that today. We didn't.
No, didn't happen.
No, yeah, but we'll get to that because the van, after living in the van for a week, it needs to be cleaned out. Yeah, pretty much. So I'm hinted at being hampered by a thing. Okay, this is our weekly medical report. I promised that this would not ever be a constant harping on our health issues, but a couple of things came up. I had this weird hand problem. I had a pinched nerve. I've had this problem of a pinched nerve in my elbow, and I think it's because the way my desk, the height of my chair compared to my desk, I think I rest my elbow on the edge of the desk in such a way as it pinches the nerve, and then it causes inflammation in my hand, and so it causes pain. I can't grab things. I can't lift things. I basically can't use my hand at all. And so that, take an ibuprofen or whatever. And I probably have to have operation at some point, but I don't want it one because it would put me out of commission for a while. So I'm trying to deal with it just as it is. And it took 5 days, and I started getting, and it's like 90% back. I can make a fist. In fact, actually, it's probably 95% back because I can make a fist. I can feel it a little bit in it, but it was like sharply painful just to even. I couldn't hold a pencil or a fork or a knife. I mean, it was really painful. Melanie had to drive to Mass last week. It was. I couldn't use it at all. So happy to have that back. But the worst problem was, we think Ben had Lyme disease from a tick.
I think. So yeah, last Sunday night, he had a little brown spot on his cheek. It looks like a big mosquito bite, but I noticed that it had a darker line on the outside than in the inside was kind of lighter colored. And the next morning, that spot was the size of a silver dollar, like twice, 2 or 3 times the size it had been the night before. And so fortunately, I snapped a photo of it with my cell phone and then called the pediatrician and made an appointment, and we went in. And
which, by the way, that wasn't the first indication that something might be wrong. We were already kind of on the alert because, a week before he'd been complaining of having a painful spot on his head, which we thought might have been him banging.
Yeah. He had a big swollen spot on his head, and he'd been having headaches and joint aches and all sorts of problems. And the doctor at that point had done a blood test for Lyme disease, but it was probably too early to catch it. So this was the clear bullseye rash on his face. By the time we got to the pediatrician, it had faded into almost invisibility. And I'm thinking the doctor's going to think I'm an idiot because there's nothing on his face. And then I remembered I'd snapped a photo of it to, share with my Facebook friends and say,
anybody know what this looks like?
Does this look like a bullseye rash to you? Should I take him to the pediatrician? The way you do. And so I pulled it out, showed it to the doctor, and the doctor says, "Oh, yeah, that definitely looks like Lyme. I'm glad you brought him in. Now that I've seen the photo, I can totally see it on his face." And he wrote us a prescription for amoxicillin.
Right. And this is not our first brush with Lyme, as we said. Anthony had it before several years ago, and we're still dealing with the repercussions of that. So it's nothing to mess with. It's just an unfortunate. But the thing is, it's so hard to. You're supposed to check for ticks every time they go out and come in. Our kids are outside all the time, and we do our best, but you just can't. We never saw the tick. The bite was probably on his head.
Right. This week, in fact, yesterday, I finally cut Ben's hair because the swelling and the pain had gone down enough that he would let me do it. It was really long and shaggy. And as I did, there's a big bare spot the size of like a quarter or a 50-cent piece on his head, which is where it had swollen up before. So it definitely looks like there was something there.
You ever notice we always measure things by how big they are compared to coins? That's because everybody knows what a coin looks like, I suppose. Right. But I just thought I'd mention that. It was like the size of a cucumber. So anyway.
So yeah, that was our adventure this week.
Yeah.
And because Ben wasn't feeling good, we declined an invitation to a friend's house.
Which would have been nice.
Which would have been really nice. Our friend Zena, who we haven't seen in forever. And I feel really bad for having to decline because we've been making plans and then having to break them over and over again. But
he was just wiped.
Yeah.
He gets, when he gets tired, he gets really like very quickly declines in his ability to function, and this just exacerbated that, and we were a little really worried, especially given the week before the camping trip and stuff. We had to also not do a scout event that we were going to do. The scouts were doing
he did
looking at the stars thing, and
Ben did get his rain checked birthday breakfast with his grandmother and granddad.
Yeah, that's nice. So my mom and dad do an annual tradition for each of the kids. They've been doing it ever since my dad moved into my brother's house, which is the next town over. So my mom and my dad are both local. They'll pick up the kid on the day of their birthday, or in this case, delayed because they were away and then he was away. But they take him out for breakfast at a local place. They take him to mass. They go to mass every day at this small chapel nearby. They go to mass, and then my mom takes him to Target and buys him a bunch of stuff, usually Legos and other things. And then they come home. But this time, he didn't quite make it through. Like he had breakfast, but he didn't eat all of his breakfast.
He picked at his breakfast, and then they went to Target and he got some stuff. And then he was clearly really tired. And so Grandma brought him back and he laid down on the couch and she said, I guess we're not making it to mass.
Yeah. So I felt bad, but I'm glad my mom brought him home instead of tried to tough it out.
So he's still slow recovery.
Yeah. But it was nice that they got to, he was very excited. He likes, it takes Ben a while to warm up to people, but he really loves spending time doing this with my mom and my dad, and I'm really grateful that we have this opportunity now for them to spend time with my mom and dad, because when my mom was living in Virginia and my dad lived an hour or some amount away, they didn't see them as much, but this is much nicer, so
yeah,
this is good. So that's been our week. We could talk about, so we sometimes talk about what we've been eating. We have not been eating all that much different. We've had, again, recovering. We're all just kind of grabbing what we can as we go.
It was the week of running to the grocery store and just throwing things in the cart rather than coming up with a meal plan.
Yeah. So today, though, we had some flank steak in the freezer, and I had been wanting to make this one recipe, and you reminded me. It's one of those things where I've been wanting to make it, but I've never make it because you need to start making it 5 hours before. It's just one of those. It's a long braise recipe. It's a ropa vieja, which is, I think it means old rope in Spanish.
Yes.
Something. And so it's flank steak braised in like a tomato and bell pepper and onions and whole cumin and coriander and garlic.
Yeah.
And
old ropes does not sound appetizing, but it's really yummy.
It was really good. And so I made that, and Melanie made red beans and rice, and
it was going to be black beans and rice, but there were no black beans in the pantry, so it was red beans.
You adapt.
But when you hear red beans and rice, you're thinking Cajun seasonings, and
no.
This was not.
This was literally just. It was black beans and rice, but with red beans instead of black.
Yeah.
So it had cumin and the normal black beans spices. But it was good. And there's lime juice in it, and there's the Spanish olives and the pimento stuffed olives that were good. Although I didn't have enough of those, so I added some. We discovered harissa olives at the supermarket, and those are really good. Harissa is a North African sort of southern Mediterranean spice
blend.
Spice blend, yeah, and it's good. So we had that tonight. Not all the kids liked it. Some of them liked it. Ben liked it.
Surprisingly, the picky child liked it, and the non-picky children did not like it.
So they ended up eating beans and rice, which is, not a bad meal. I liked it on Sunday to have a meal that takes some time to cook. Like a braise or a stew or that feels like the day when you make a meal that's a little something extra.
Sometimes on Sunday, I just want to come home and crash and not have to cook.
Well, see, you didn't. I
appreciate
the
that
rice
you
and
cooked,
beans.
but yeah. I alternate. Some Sundays I want to do something really fancy, like make moussaka that has a billion steps and takes all the time. And then sometimes I'm just like, no.
Is it moussaka or moussaka?
I probably say it wrong. I'm sure.
Well, I've heard both, and so I don't know. But
I say it with the Texan accent.
Moussaka. It's like Mufasa. from Lion King. The other thing we made today, I made the pancakes, and I like the idea. Today, I got the whole batter ready before we left for Mass. The batter was ready in the bowl, all mixed, ready to go by 7:20 this morning.
It was impressive.
That was good. I was so happy to do that because then you come home, turn on the griddle, and start cooking. And the kids, we'd all eaten by 11. I mean, that doesn't sound impressive, except when we were going to the later Mass before they changed the Mass schedule. Like, we wouldn't get done with pancakes until after, like, till noon, and like the half of the day is gone, and all that. So I'm happy to get things done and start cleaning up and move on to something else. So that was nice.
And something else today was watching a movie.
Yes. So that brings us to what's been entertaining us. So the movie, all right. So we ended up watching two things. Anthony really wanted to see a particular scene in Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith.
Not the whole movie, just one scene.
A particular scene. And if you're a Star Wars fan, you'll understand what I'm talking about. It's the scene when Order 66 is given. The clone troopers turn on the Jedi, and specifically when they turn on Obi-Wan, the ones who were with him, including Commander Cody. Commander Cody is the head clone trooper who is closest to Obi-Wan. And Anthony had been reading in one of the Star Wars visual dictionaries or encyclopedias or one of these source books that he had they were mine, but that he reads and about it. And he wanted to see if Commander Cody is the one who actually betrays the Jedi that he was friends with. And so he wanted to see that scene, and we did watch it. And yes, indeed, he does. He orders him to shoot at Obi-Wan. So that was we ended up watching the scenes around it a little bit.
Yeah, of course.
Including Hayden Christensen's hammy acting. But it was good. So we watched that, but then we watched How to Train Your Dragon 2. So our kids have only just recently, within the past 6 months, seen the first How to Train Your Dragon movie, and they loved it. They thought it was hysterical, it was so funny. They loved it. They loved the Scottish accents. They love Brave, and I do the Scottish accent poorly, I know. And so they just love that, and they love that whole part of it, and they love the crazy characters. And in fact, before we watch this movie, they've got the movies are based on a series of books, and they've read some of the books in the series.
I think only Anthony has.
I think Bella and Sophie have.
Oh, maybe.
Yeah, I think Bella has read more of it, and then Sophie didn't read one of them, and was one. If a book has come into the house, it's likely that no matter who it was for, Bella has read it. So
yeah, she picked up books, and Anthony actually frequently picks up books that don't belong to him too. Out of curiosity. So it's hard to tell who's read what.
Right.
Anthony checks the books out from the library, but they made
Yes.
the rounds.
Yep. So we watched How to Train Your Dragon 2, which was good. It was I think it was as good as the first one. You didn't watch it, I know.
I haven't seen either one, so
Yeah. But my opinion is, I mean, they're good. They're relatively paint by numbers. You know what's going to happen. It follows the formula. It doesn't veer off into anything that's objectionable or annoying too much. I mean, I think it was right. It was on target, both movies, and it was interesting to see they were made about 4 or 5 years apart, to see how they develop the characters and move on with the story. And there's a third one, which they're going to be asking for anytime now. So we'll eventually get to that. So we watched that. So that was good. So
and I was pleased because I remembered before they actually watched the movie to ask them to set a condition that they could watch the movie if they tidied up the toys and did the dishes.
Parenting hacks. So you can do this thing you want to do, this extra thing, but you have to spend 20 minutes outside playing. You have to clean up. You have to empty the dishwasher. Someone has to empty the dishwasher. Someone has to pick up all the Legos in the living room. And then you have to spend 5 minutes in your room cleaning up?
Yes. It was 100, pick up 100 things in your room or spend 5 minutes, whichever happens first.
Right.
So we set a timer. They started picking things up. For Sophie, she reached 85 things at the 5-minute mark. And
of course, they always spend like 10 minutes complaining about the 5 minutes they're going to have to, how it's going to take too long. Dude, you would have been done 5 minutes ago if you'd just gone and done it. It's without fail every time. So it's still a lesson they're going to learn. But at least we got some stuff. We got them to do some stuff. So that's good. Nothing for free. Uh, or none of the extras for free. Put it that way. So what have you been reading or watching?
Let's see. I picked up a bunch of books from the library, some of them on my Kindle and some of them in paper form.
Old-fashioned form.
Old-fashioned form, yes. So I picked up The Buried Giant by Kazuo Ishiguro. I think I said that right. Which is I'm still trying to figure out what it's about. It seems to be set in Saxon England.
So, you got to say something about Kazuo Ishiguro first. Despite his Japanese name, I assume.
Yes.
Yeah. Writes English historical novels.
Right.
He's the one he wrote the book, The Remains of the Day, that was made into the movie that I call The Remains of the Era because it just seemed to go on and on.
The one with Anthony Hopkins and Emma Thompson.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
I loved it. It was beautiful.
Oh my gosh. That was like the longest 3 weeks of my life.
But this book, rather.
But the new book you're reading, The Buried Giant.
It's very different. So it's set during, long, long ago, right after the days of King Arthur, when there are Saxons and Britons in England, and that's about it. And so far it's followed an old couple whose names are Axel and Beatrice. And they live in this sort of fantasy England where there are real ogres and dragons and such. And they have a problem, which is that everybody around them seems to be forgetting things. They don't remember the past, and only Axel really seems to be aware of the fact that they're forgetting things. Beatrice, a little bit, maybe. And so they've decided to go. They're not getting along with the villagers in their village, partly because maybe they're getting old and nobody's respecting them. And so they've decided to go visit their son. And so now they're on this sort of epic trek to the neighboring village where they think their son lives, but they're not sure that they remember the way. And so far they've met some colorful characters, a knight and a
Saxon warrior.
A Saxon warrior, a boy who was going to be killed by his fellow villagers. And so they're Britons, but a lot of the people they're meeting are Saxons, and so there's a clash of cultures. And like I said, there seems to be this general pervasive forgetfulness, and it's very sort of magical realism, maybe, or just it's not exactly fantasy and it's not exactly realistic. And the narrator takes pains, which is one thing I've found very strange, is the narrator takes pains to remind you that you are a modern reader and this is taking place sometime long ago that you're not familiar with. And so he'll say things like, well, it would have looked like this at the time that they were living. I'm like, would have, or it did? It's very weird, distant narrator.
Interesting.
Anyway, I'm reading that, and then I'm reading the Crestomancy Chronicles by Diana Wynne Jones. Previously, I've read Howl's Moving Castle and its sequels that she wrote. It's fantasy novels for the middle grade set. So junior novels. I forget what they're called. Anyway, fun, light fantasy set in sort of a pseudo-Victorian England.
Like steampunk?
Not really steampunk.
In this multiple parallel universes of the 12 related worlds, only an enchanter with 9 lives is powerful enough to control the rampant misuse of magic and to hold the title Crestomancy. The Chants are a family strong in magic, but neither Christopher Chant nor Cat Chant can work even the simplest of spells. Who could have dreamed that both Christopher and Cat were born with 9 lives, or that they could lose them so quickly? Yes, Cat, 9 lives.
Yes, exactly. It's a nickname.
Okay. Gotcha.
So yeah, they're fun. I'm definitely going to pass them on to Isabella and Sophia, who will probably like them a lot. Although I suspect that they won't like them quite as much as they like Diane Duane's Young Wizard series. I think they're a little bit lighter in terms of the themes and things, but the one I read last night was, I don't even remember the title, but it was a sort of rehash of Romeo and Juliet set in Italy.
The Magicians of Caprona?
The Magicians of Caprona.
Yes.
Their magical system is all about singing because it's Italy and they sing all the spells.
Of course.
There are two households. They hate each other. They're bitter enemies. And of course, there's a marriage of two young people from the two households and some, strife and
Oh, the
conflict and stuff.
Shakespeare guy knows what he's doing, doesn't he?
It's a good plot.
So I've been reading. So the book I finished most recently was a new book, Tom Clancy's Enemy Contact, a Jack Ryan Jr. novel.
Ryan Jr.?
Jack Ryan Jr. So
he's the son of the original Jack Ryan?
Right. So there's now two series of books. There's the Jack Ryan books, who follows Jack Ryan as president of the United States. So he's president now.
Uh-huh.
And then there's Jack Ryan Jr., his son, who works for a financial firm, like it's a front that looks like a financial trading firm, like a hedge fund or something.
But it's not really.
But it's secretly a black book, off the books, black ops, special missions force for the president. They answer only to the president.
Oh, that sounds interesting.
Yeah, and it's the son of the president. That makes no sense at all. But that's it's part of the thing is how he has to keep his identity secret when he's out there, messing around with terrorists and Russian spies or Chinese spies, that sort of thing. Like they can't know his real identity, because the real son of the president is followed. Who's got Secret Service around him. Maybe that's the way it works. But
how exactly would that work? Like, how would you slip the Secret Service?
Well, he doesn't. He doesn't have a Secret Service detail. That is just part of the story.
Okay.
So this is like the 12th book in the Jack Ryan Jr. series, and this is written by Mike Madden. The Jack Ryan series is now written by Mark Cameron. So two different authors. They're okay. They're pretty good. I mean, they're interesting. The thing I always liked about the Jack Ryan books is, well, a couple things. One of the things I liked is Tom Clancy had a moral code to him, and thus his characters did. And there was good, and there was good and evil. There was right and there was wrong. And the good guys don't do the wrong things. They make mistakes, but they don't do evil in order to accomplish good.
The ends don't justify the means.
Exactly. Now that doesn't mean that people don't, like I said, people don't cross the line sometimes or make mistakes or don't do the wrong thing. But it's never said, well, it's never justified. It's never, this is the right thing to do now, even though, it's not a 24 where we have to torture the guy to death or whatever, and that's okay because we got the code or whatever. So that's one of the things I like about it. And I feel like the current guys who are writing it, the Jack Ryan Jr. is as a guy who's probably, I think the character's like in his late 20s, early 30s, is sort of struggling with some of those life things, like sees his parents, their marriage, their family, his brothers and sisters, and how some of them have settled down, and how he's starting to feel this need to find someone to settle down with, and yet he's got this life that he's living that has, it's dangerous and it's full of intrigue, and he's always having to travel at a moment's notice. And I like that. I enjoy this character in both of them. The funny thing is even though this is Jack Ryan Jr. and the other one is Jack Ryan Sr., both guys are in both books. It's just I think it's just a matter of how much time is spent with each one.
So like shifts point of view to both.
Yeah, right. Yeah, because like so this book I just read, which is a Jack Ryan Jr. novel, most of the point of view is with Junior, but there are significant periods of narrative that are from the dad's point of view. So
that's interesting.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious how they juggle it and how they make the distinction. I'd like to find an article or something or an interview with them to figure that out.
Do the plot lines of the two series coordinate so that they're both?
A little bit, like anything that carries over, like an injury or a death or anything like that. Yes, those things they are the same universe. They are within canon.
Okay.
But I don't know if. I'm trying to think if they ever mention he went up against this bad guy, and then in the other book it mentions how he went up against this bad guy. I think it might. I'm not sure. So I'm curious. I'm curious how they handle that, how they balance it.
That sounds difficult to coordinate.
Well, I don't think it would be, as long as the two guys and the editors talk, as long as they plan. I mean, you could plan it all out. I mean, frankly, I find it would be more difficult, like what they do in Star Wars, which is they have 25 books in production all at once, all across the entire Star Wars timeline, with 25 different authors, and trying to make sure that nobody. And plus movies and TV shows being produced at the same time. I can imagine how complicated that is.
Well, yeah,
keep that straight.
That's more complicated.
Yeah, this one I think is pretty straightforward. You just get the two guys writing the books, so I think it's not too bad. So the other thing I've been doing is watching this new series on Netflix, and I keep coming into Melanie every night, going, "You've got to hear about this bonkers sci-fi series I'm listening to. I'm watching. It's on Netflix, and it's called Another Life, and the plot is, how did I describe it the other day? It's a cross between Arrival, Interstellar, Alien, and there was one other one I like, Independence Day.
That's way too many cross.
It is so crazy. So, okay, I'm trying to open up here in Netflix, but of course Netflix has this horrible habit of wanting to play trailers for you.
Autoplay.
No, I don't want you to play the show. I just want to see the description. That's what it is. So I'm trying to pull up Another Life, and tell me about the overview. Oh, it's not. It's only okay. Well, anyway, it takes place some distant period, some unspecified distance in the future. Let's say a couple 100 years, 300, 400 years in the future, maybe. Some stuff is very clearly in the future technology. Some of it looks like your neighbors down the street, which maybe actually might feel a little more realistic. One day, a bizarre alien ship lands in a field and builds this crystalline structure and starts sending signals pointed at this star, Canis Major. And so this one guy, he's a scientist, he's called by the government to go study it. His wife happens to be an astronaut, and she's recruited to lead a mission to take a ship to that star where it's communicating.
What are the odds?
Right, what are the odds? So, and their parents, they have a daughter. They only have one, because it's all these movies they always only seem to have one kid in these movies. But they have a daughter, and so there's that whole issue.
How old is the daughter?
8.
Wait. They're sending a woman off into an interstellar mission who has an 8-year-old?
Yes. Now, keep in mind, they have faster than light travel, so the mission is supposed to be like 3 months long.
Okay, so this is more like an army deployment sort of.
Right. Except things go wrong. And so they're in like suspended animation sleep for much of the travel. And then and on board the ship is an AI that is a hologram. And so like everything goes wrong. It is one thing after another. It is hysterical how things go wrong on a constant basis every episode.
Is this supposed to be a comedy?
No, it's not funny. It's hysterical in the sense of what else could go wrong for these people? Crew members are getting killed. Everything. It's different. Like they have to. What was the first thing?
So it's unbelievably.
It's almost unbelievably
like a sort
crazy
of soap opera.
Yeah. Well, and they also hype up the fact that it's a bunch of, apart from Katie Sackhoff, who was Starbuck in Battlestar Galactica, so she's probably late 30s, early 40s, is my guess, is her age. Apart from her, the rest of them are all young. They're all 20s, maybe early 30s, but mostly 20s. And they're all attractive. They're unrealistically attractive, except for the one token fat guy, who's the biologist. Because you could have a token fat guy biologist who's the unattractive one, and then they have a gender non-binary blah 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 medic who's not believable at all in his role, and I'm not buying it, and it's so weird. So I'm not even going to talk about that one. But they have these situations where is this one going to hook up with that one? Are they going to hook up over here? And these two hook up, and this one wants to hook up with both of them, and it's like. Okay, it's getting a little soap opera in space now. Nothing explicit. There's no. So far, I'm 7 out of 10 episodes in. So far, no nudity. I'm trying to think. No nudity. But there is basically prime time, like people kissing and making out sort of stuff.
Okay.
So there's the language. There is plenty of language. They have F-bombs and such. So it's because it's Netflix. They have to do that. But I mean, it's kind of bonkers, but it's kind of compelling. I want to see what happens. I want to see how it turns out. I mean, I have a guess of how it's all going to turn out, and it's a series, and it's season 1, so presumably it's going to be future seasons. So it's kind of interesting. I'm curious. I like the actors. I like Katie Sackhoff. Like I said, she was Starbuck. The AI is William, and that's an actor. I don't remember the actor's name, but he was Danny Pink in Doctor Who.
Oh, I like him.
Yeah, he's got a very distinct voice. And when I saw him on screen, like this always happens to me. I saw him on screen. I'm like, I know him. Who is he? And then IMDb, Another Life. Oh, he was Danny Pink. And the husband, who's the scientist of Starbuck, is. Do you remember the Return of Doctor Mysterio, Doctor Who episode, Christmas special?
You're gonna have to jog me more than just the title.
Okay, so it took place in New York City, and it was Peter Capaldi as Doctor Who.
Okay.
And Nardole, remember Nardole, the bald guy, very very funny. And there was a guy who had superpowers, Grant.
Oh, right. Like
he was the ghost,
right?
And the Doctor was Doctor Mysterio. So it was almost like a comic book episode.
Yes, I liked that one.
So the guy who played Grant is her husband.
Okay.
So it was a Doctor Who connection. So I just had to mention that. But so I mean, it's popcorn TV. It's no great work of cinema. It's not as good as, say, Lost in Space. Netflix's Lost in Space. That was better. And it's getting in episode 7 by episode. Like I just finished episode 7. It's starting to get pretty ridiculous. So
starting to.
Well, I mean, like it's really pushing. It's pushed the boundaries. The body count is pretty high at this point. The boundaries have been pushed pretty far. I'm kind of curious to see how far they go past these boundaries. So, anyway, so that's what I've been watching. So this week, I've watched some Doctor Who and Star Trek because I have to watch those anyway, and I've been catching up on another episode of Jessica Jones. That's been taking a while. I watched an episode of Ken Burns' Civil War. I've been trying to watch it. Those, it's good. It's good. It's just long. Every episode is like an hour and a half, and it's packed full.
You know, I really need to rewatch this. I watched them when I was in high school, maybe college.
Oh, this is my first time seeing it.
Oh,
I've never seen it before. This is really good.
Yeah, I saw it when it first aired.
Yeah.
Well, that was I think after my dad's Gettysburg fascination, where he watched the Gettysburg movie over and over again for like a year. So,
well, I want to see. I've seen the Gettysburg movie, but of course I didn't get it. Right. But now I would get it if I watched it. That's why I want to watch it.
I did love the Civil War documentary, the Ken Burns. It was great.
Yeah. I just watched the part where they had the Sullivan Ballou letter. Now I understand. Like that, the Sullivan Ballou letter with the Ashokan farewell, and he's writing a letter to his wife back home. The just in case letter. If I don't return home, when you feel the summer breeze upon your cheek, that will be me standing next to you, touching you. And like all the women swoon. Oh, it's so romantic. And and all the men like, oh, it's so manly. And then he died like a week after he wrote the letter. And,
yeah, I do. I mean, I don't remember specifics because it's been decades.
Yes,
but
20 years.
But I remember how moving the letters were.
Yes,
photographs, and just how very
real
and personal it made it. And it was my real first experience with that kind of historical storytelling.
I think that's what made the Civil War documentary groundbreaking. I mean, it really changed documentary storytelling, but before it and after it. After a lot of people have tried to emulate Ken Burns' style in documentary storytelling. Afterward, they make it personal, make a connection. They take these grand historical events that can be so large as to just be almost unreal, and to really drill down. Like you don't ignore it, but you drill down into the personal, the human story, the individual stories.
I have to say, I even saw some of that in the audio tour we did when we were at Gettysburg.
Mhm.
There was sort of the grand sweep of the battle, but then every like stop also had a story of like individuals, like specific people, their names, the personal touch of that individual story.
Some of those stories were actually from the documentary, or were in the documentary. I don't know which came first, but the story of the brothers who on either side of, like, one was a Confederate, one was a Union soldier at Gettysburg. The brothers who were there on opposite sides. That's in the Civil War documentary.
That seems like that'd be a hard story
to miss, to overlook,
not.
unless you don't know it. I mean, that's the thing, is there's so many stories. In order to pull out the good ones and to incorporate them into your narrative, into the whole sweep of that's harder than it looks.
Right. Speaking of interesting Civil War stories, though, actually, I wanted to mention while we're on the topic. So a friend of mine, her son, who's Bella's age, they live in New York, but we've met up with them here in Boston. They came to see the Pooh exhibit.
Winnie the Pooh exhibit at the Museum of Fine Arts.
Yes.
not the other kind of. Yes. That would be a very different exhibit.
Anyway, so he's kind of Bella's pen pal, and they chat on the phone every once in a while and such. So he's in a Civil War camp this week. A reenactment, like
a camp for kids doing Civil War reenactment.
Yeah, with like real reenactors. The kids are all
at Andersonville.
Right. The kids are all given costumes, and they learn about the Civil War. And his younger brother is doing another reenactment camp that's not specific to the Civil War. His little brother is adopted from China, and he was feeling a little bit blue because he doesn't look like all the other kids, and he doesn't feel like
he fits in with the Civil War reenactment.
What's really cool is that one of the reenactors who works at this camp is a Chinese woman who makes like period costumes and does interpretation. And so she found pictures for them of Chinese soldiers who served in the Civil War. And I was really fascinated because this was a part of history that I'd never heard of. But evidently there were about 50, 60 Chinese Americans who served during the war on both the Union and Confederate sides.
Wow.
So that was my interesting history tidbit. Today I learned that there were Chinese Civil War veterans. What's really sad was that they were promised citizenship for serving, like all veterans who served and were honorably discharged would be given citizenship. That was a promise that Congress made in 1862, and it was rescinded. And in fact, Chinese did not receive full citizenship, and there were Civil War veterans there was one guy who had lost both arms and both legs. He was married to an American woman, and they had 6 children, and he could not get a veteran's pension because he was not considered to be a citizen.
Wow, that is an injustice. That is terrible.
Although Congress did retroactively, a few years ago, gave them citizenship. Sort of a nice gesture, but of course,
about a century and a half too late.
Right, didn't actually help the individuals involved.
Right. A lot of justice needs to happen. We need to be made up for. I mean, it's so ironic, given that we were part of the reason for the war was for freedom for some, for some people who deserve freedom and liberty, but we didn't extend the full benefits of liberty and freedom to everyone who fought for that.
Right. I keep thinking of the line from the musical Hamilton, where at the end of the song about the Battle of Yorktown, it says, "Black and white soldiers wonder if this really means freedom." And then there's a beat, and it says, "Not yet." And right. And that "not yet" is spoken by George Washington, who is played by the wonderful Christopher Jackson, who is himself Black. And so there's this like sort of level of irony where he's saying, he's looking at the past and saying, no, we fought for freedom, but we didn't actually get freedom for a long time after that war. And so again, with the Civil War, you also see this. Does it really mean freedom? For a lot of people, not yet.
Interesting. So on that note,
On that cheerful note.
on that cheerful note, let's move along to our last segment for this week. Well, second to last, because we do have some feedback at the end that I want to read. But we were it's Sunday, and we'd gone to mass this morning, as we do, and we heard the the Sunday readings, including the first reading, which was the Abraham bargaining on behalf of Sodom and Gomorrah.
One of my favorite readings. I really love Abraham in this reading.
But you had some interesting off-the-cuff reflections that you wrote up on your blog today about the readings that kind of struck you differently.
Right. So on the way, I tend to read the readings to the kids on the way to mass. Just, I think, hearing it once right before we go into mass just gives them a little bit of like, oh, that's familiar. And so they're more likely to pay attention during the readings. At least I think they are. Anyway, so I read the reading from Genesis about Abraham bargaining with God. You know, if you can find 50 innocent men, 45, 30, 20, 10. But then it's followed by the responsorial psalm, whose response is, Lord, on the day I called for help, you answered me. And what really jumped out at me from the Genesis reading is that it starts off with God has, you've had the 3 guests come and eat a meal with Abraham. That was last week's reading. And it says God had heard the cries and wanted to go down to Sodom and Gomorrah and see if the injustices that were happening were equal to.
Well, here's the quote. The outcry against Sodom and Gomorrah is so great that I must go down and see whether or not their actions fully correspond to the cry against them that comes to me. I mean to find out.
I'm really fascinated by the fully correspond to the cry. Like, God is hearing this cry of injustice and a cry for help. God, horrible things are happening to us. Please hear us and give us justice. And yet there's this like, well, what's really going on? Let's investigate.
Let's get a blue ribbon panel of the Holy Spirit and the second person of the Trinity to go check it out.
Wait, let's go hear both sides of the story. Because there usually are 2 sides of the story. And so there's this recognition in the story that there are 2 sides to every story and that God listens to both sides. He looks at the actions as well as listening to the cries of those who call out to him.
It's interesting that it's not God didn't smite Sodom and Gomorrah because he looked down and saw them being evil. The action against Sodom and Gomorrah came after people called for help. Or as I wrote, I call Ed for help. Mistyped it in the show notes. But no, they called on God, please help us, and they appealed to him, and God didn't just reflexively say, oh my people, they said something's wrong. Okay, smite, and he just smites Sodom and Gomorrah. No, I'm going to examine the situation. What is the proper response here? What should I do? And even in that circumstance, Abraham kind of talks. I mean, of course, he's not changing God's mind, but he's trying to determine from God how do you determine what is just, God? How do you determine what action to take when the wheat is among the chaff?
Right. And I really like what Abraham says to God. Far be it from you to do such a thing, to make the innocent die with the guilty. So Abraham knows who God is. He knows that God punishes the guilty but doesn't punish the innocent. And yet, so he knows that, okay, there are guilty people there, but how do you destroy an entire city without destroying the innocent along with the guilty?
Right. And it doesn't ignore the fact that even today, like the innocent die alongside the guilty in natural disasters. But natural disasters, or even man-made disasters, are not the same thing. It's not God's punishment, God's divine justice. Really, I mean, the divine justice we're talking about here is the ultimate justice, the justice of the last judgment. And God really does separate the wheat from the chaff, the sheep from the goats. He doesn't just say, everybody here is just like, I'm so sick of all of this. You like a parent sometimes does. I don't care which of you are guilty or which of you are innocent. There's a ruckus going on in this room. Everyone go to your room.
Right. I've done that. Like, I don't
we've
care.
all done that, yeah.
I don't care what the two sides are. I'm punishing you all because it's just, I don't want to hear it.
Yeah, because I'm a human being. Can't deal with it. But God, as Father, is ultimate justice. Will not punish. God does not punish the innocent. I mean, that is a key element in all this. God does not punish. No matter what we think, no matter what suffering comes our way, God is not punishing the innocent. He's not punishing you for nothing. He's not punishing you if you've done nothing wrong. God doesn't punish the innocent. Sometimes suffering happens, but that's not God punishing you.
Right.
I think that's another element in this.
And the other thing I really liked was the sort of to reflect on what happens in the story after the reading that we get, is that, in fact, even though God does destroy Sodom and Gomorrah, which means, according to the bargain he made with Abraham, and we know God keeps his promises, he couldn't find even 10 innocent people in these cities. Like, they were so far gone. There weren't even 10 innocent people. But we do know that there were some innocent people. And in fact, Abraham's nephew, Lot, was in Sodom, and God sent a messenger to pull him out. So God didn't destroy the innocent people in Sodom, because we have a really good record of the fact that some of them did escape.
Do you know there's some evidence, some archaeological evidence that there might have been an asteroid strike over that area?
Really? That's fascinating.
Yes.
I was wondering if there was any archaeological evidence, because I was reading with the book with the kids a geography book, the Book of Marvels, which talked about like the Dead Sea, and it mentioned that Sodom and Gomorrah are thought to be in the area of the Dead Sea, and perhaps even have been buried under the Dead Sea.
Yeah, I think it was. I think it came up. Yeah, this is I found a couple articles. UniverseToday.com has one. It's actually an old one. This is over 10 years old, this article. I think it came up when Jimmy Aiken and I were talking about it on Mysterious World, that there's this evidence for this asteroid impact in around 3000 BC in Austria. Interesting. Okay, so anyway, I'm not going to read the article while we're recording,
Right.
but so I don't know. That's an interesting tangent on it. But you know, the other thing is to then look at the gospel,
right,
and to see what's the gospel? Gospel is teaching us to pray to God, pray to the Father, and like, what does that have to do with Sodom and Gomorrah? But it's what it has to do with Abraham. What Abraham does is, you can't annoy God. Like sometimes we have the kids again, mommy, why?
What? Stop! No, don't.
But like with God, that we can't do that. It doesn't do that to him. It doesn't happen that way.
I love the parable that Jesus tells in today's gospel.
The friend with the bread.
The bread. So your friend has visitors show up at the last minute. He's out at midnight. He's out of bread. He knocks on the door, and you're like, "Go away! I'm in bed. The door's locked." Right.
I'd answer the Ring doorbell. What are you doing?
What do you want? Why are you bugging me? I'm in bed.
You better be bleeding.
Right. And Jesus says, okay, your neighbor is not going to, even if your neighbor doesn't give you bread because of your friendship, and the guy in the story is clearly not giving up bread because of his friendship. He's saying, I'm in bed, go away. He will give you bread because you're persistent.
Right. The parable isn't, you should always have charity in your heart and get out of bed and give out of love. No, it's really the parable's about be persistent to get what you want.
So Jesus is really telling us to be the obnoxious neighbor who doesn't stop knocking until he makes his lazy neighbor get out of bed and give him the bread that he needs.
Fine. Here's your bread. Be happy with it. I'm going back to bed.
But our pastor, Father Michael, I don't remember much of the homily, even though I listened very intently this week, and I did actually hear all of it. My brain is like Swiss cheese, and I didn't have time to like integrate what I heard and process. I wish there was a period of silence after the homily where I could just like go over it in my head so I'd remember it long term. Maybe I should take notes. Anyway, he did say something along the lines of, God wants to feed us. He wants to feed us not only our physical needs, but our spiritual needs. And he wants us to keep bugging him until we get what we need. And so, like, the give us this day our daily bread really means Jesus wants us to ask every single day about every single thing that we need. We should be the annoying child who pesters their parent saying, okay, I need this and I need this and I need this. I need a cup of milk and it needs to be in the pink cup and it needs to have the orange straw and the yellow lid. And I need a sandwich and I need to have the peanut butter on one side and the jelly on the other and the crusts cut off. He wants us to bother him with that level of detail, I think, is really what I get from the gospel reading.
I mean, yeah, I get the persistence. Like it's like the unjust judge, the widow and the unjust judge, where
I love that one.
The unjust judge doesn't give in because it's the right thing to do. He gives in because he's so exasperated by this woman who will not stop nagging him. Fine, I'll give you what you want. Will you leave me alone? And Jesus is saying, okay, if even a flawed, bad person like this will give someone what they want, how much more so will your Father who loves you, who is perfect and perfect justice and perfect love, will give you what you need?
And I think for me, the takeaway is that oftentimes I get bored of hearing myself asking for the same things over and over again. And I'm tempted to stop asking. And in fact, sometimes I do stop asking for the things I need because I've been asking God for the same things over and over again. And I still haven't got them. And it's been years, sometimes lots and lots of years. And I still haven't got it, but I still want it. And so I give up. But I think that Jesus is saying to me, at least, don't give up. Keep asking.
Keep asking. To the one who knocks, the door will be opened. I mean, there's that.
It doesn't say when or how soon the door is going to be opened, but it will be opened.
Yeah. I like, what father among you would hand his son a snake when he asked for a fish? I'm like, well, I mean, would it be a funny joke? Would it be funny? Because I might, if it's not a poisonous snake. If you then, who are wicked, like that, if you who are wicked or sinful, you know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will the Father in heaven? I like that imagery there. So yeah, it's one of the things, like that persistence in prayer, that repetitive prayer, like being repetitive, it kind of acts against people who say, oh, repetitive prayer is not real prayer. It's not thoughtful. Well, Jesus isn't telling us to have extemporaneous prayer that is unique each, in every sentence we give.
Right. I mean, this parable comes right after the disciples say, teach us how to pray. And so he says,
pray this, Father, our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, amen.
And be the annoying guy who knocks on the door all the time.
Yes. Pray this way. Pray with these words over and over and over and over and over again. So that was a good reading, and I'll put the link to your blog post that kind of explicates it in the show notes, so everyone can enjoy it too. So that was good readings this week. So I mentioned we had some feedback. Our friend Jim Beagley, who is a Civil War historian, lives in central Pennsylvania, who I was supposed to contact when we were coming to Gettysburg to let him know we were coming, so he could give us tips and show us around, and I totally spaced on that and forgot.
You didn't tell me anything about that, or I would have reminded you.
Well, yeah, I mean, I forgot. So he has been actually giving me some good tips. We complained last time about the expense of everything. Like everything at Gettysburg at the national park costs something. It costs extra, and when you have a big family, it costs a lot. But what he said, if you plan on spending multiple days in Gettysburg, join the Gettysburg Foundation. The Gettysburg Foundation is a nonprofit, non-governmental organization that runs a lot of that stuff. That they run all of the programming. He says if you get a family membership, it gives you access to the museums, the cyclorama, and the David Wills House. Those are two other parts of the thing, and the films, and the Park Service also offers, he said, many free programs such as walking tours and activities for kids. A family membership, a 1-year family membership, is $68. That's 2 adults and children, which is everyone under the age of 18 years of age and younger, which is unusual, I find, we have in our experience with memberships to
Yeah, a
museums
lot of
and
times
things.
memberships are like two
Two-
adults, 2 kids, 2 adults, 4 kids, but no more than 4 kids.
Yeah, but it doesn't cover our entire family. Well, in this case, it's 2 adults and all your kids, which thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
that is a great deal, and I'm really, really sad that we did not have that when we went. And we're going to have to go back.
I mean, $6 to $8. I think we did the calculation. $6 to $8 would have been like the film for us.
Right.
So-
There would have been one thing.
So what you get with this, unlimited complimentary admission to the Cyclorama Film and Museum experience at the National Military Park and at the David Wills House. You get a 10% discount at the bookstore, of course. You get the Friends of Gettysburg newsletter, an annual calendar, et cetera, discounts to other things. So there's like some other stuff too. So
See, I was saying while we were there's got to be some kind of family discount. I can't believe that there isn't a family discount that lets you pay one price and get into all this stuff for like.
well, what's annoying is that when I asked for when I went up and asked at the info desk, they didn't tell me this. I would have had to have gone to a separate desk for the foundation. The foundation has a desk.
So the Park Service doesn't want you to know about this great deal.
Or they're overwhelmed, or the guy who was working that day just spaced on it, or it's
Right.
It's what happens. It's frustrating, but we do plan to go back, and now there's a reason for us to go back to see this stuff that we didn't see this time.
And a commenter on my blog also said that she thought that going to see the reenactors who do reenactment every year
during the actual reenactment
Right.
events. Yeah,
She said if you go early, you can a lot of the reenactors get there before the actual event and camp out, and you can go around and talk to them, and they're of course all Civil War buffs who know a lot about the subject. And she said she thought it would be worthwhile to go. And even though I said, well, that's in the summer, and we were kind of hoping to never go back to Gettysburg in the summer again, that might be inducement if the forecast looked really good.
well, that's the thing. Yeah, and based on the campground, well, I mean, I'm gonna guess that during reenactment times, the campgrounds are gonna be much more crowded.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think if we can continue to do the way we're doing things now, if we can say a couple weeks out, or we can look at it and go, what's the weather forecast? Call, is there space? If everything looks good, then maybe go for a few days.
Right. Yeah.
I think that would be the way to do it. We'll see. Anyway, well, we've been talking for a long time, but thank you, Jim, for all of your tips. He also gave us some tips on the Rosary Walk at the shrine that we missed because of the storms. We couldn't walk around the grounds of the shrine, and all that. So, but thank you, Jim, for those tips. And in fact, I want to have Jim on an episode of Let's Talk to talk about Civil War history and that sort of stuff. So, we look forward to that. So that's it from us. What did you think of our discussion? You have anything to respond? Any tips for us? Any suggestions on any of those things we talked about? Let us know by visiting sqpn.com/bets. That's BETTS. Or the SQPN Facebook page, facebook.com/StarQuestMedia. Leave feedback there, or send an email to bets@sqpn.com. You'll find the relevant links to our discussion for the books and the other things in Melanie's blog post on our show notes at sqpn.com. Be sure to subscribe to the show. If you're just listening online on our website or something like that, subscribe to the show in Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn, your favorite podcast app, or on YouTube, where if you do subscribe on the SQPN YouTube channel, hit the bell to make sure you get notifications. You can also listen on Spotify and on your Amazon Echo device if you just say the wake word, Echo, that's not ours, but I don't want it to start playing. Echo, play Raising the Bets podcast. It will play the most recent episode of the podcast. So until next time, I'm Don Bettinelli.
And I'm Melanie Bettinelli.
Thank you for listening to Raising the Bets on StarQuest.